Hi, folks, with Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the the, the, the fanatical, hysterical attempts to infuse anything to do with Black history, including recent history, and whether it be the history of Black musicians or singers or entertainers, to infuse those stories with as much hyped up insane, made up propaganda that they possibly can to race hustle. And if the entertainer, the Black entertainer, happens to be gay or lesbian, to throw race and gender and sexuality hustling into it as well. And I've just for the sake of it, I looked at it's an hour-long documentary about quite an accomplished singer and piano player, and she again just on an hour it goes, and fully more than half of what otherwise could have been an interesting biography, more than half of this so-called biography documentary, more than half of it is race hustling, including incredible like pictures of the Ku Klux Klan before this person was even born, decades before she was even born, and they've got imagery of the Ku Klux Klan and the stars and the bars, and it's an American entertainment, and that they pack it with as much dramatic propaganda and insane propaganda, and propaganda that's not representative or has anything to do with her life at all, but doesn't matter. They just pack it in. Ominous music, the whole. So the intention of doing this biography wasn't to do a biography about someone who was quite successful, or in this case, very successful in the music industry as a singer and entertainer. No, we're not going to stray. We're going to use this as a propaganda device. And one wonders if the biography would even have got made. That person is, their musical accomplishments are irrelevant. The accomplishments of this Black entertainer have been hijacked by the race hustler propaganda globalist crowd and the funding. And I've noticed, I looked at 3 biographies or documentary biographies, and all of them have the same source of funding. So the intention at the outset is how can we create race hustling propaganda just using this musician or this entertainer's their headline, their name, as a stalking horse for pushing out the propaganda. It's quite outrageous, and I wish they would state this is a propaganda documentary, because people that might be interested, as I am, in musical history may want to look at it in the first instance at least. Say, well, this could be interesting. Wow, this I remember this singer or this entertainer and so on. So I'll just talk a little bit about that now. The deliberate, willful, I would argue, treacherous misrepresentation is goes on about. I mean, there's no race hustle, there's no racism that prevented this entertainer being successful. So they're saying, well, here's this very successful Black entertainer who was somehow held back and oppressed and treated abominably by evil fascist Nazi racists. Oh, yeah? Well, how come they were so successful? So I'll mention sort of one, and given that the other 2 are still alive, I won't mention their names, but I'll talk about them. But I don't know how many people know, older people may know. I remember hearing these things when I was a little kid, and they were already 10 plus years after the song's release. But there was an entertainer from, I think it was New Orleans, called Fats Domino, or that was his stage name. And he had a very interesting piano playing style that was sort of crossing over from blues and jazz pop type combo, and he was also a songwriter, singer, entertainer, piano player and the like. But Blueberry Hill was one of his big hits, and Ain't That a Shame was another one, and he had a few more. His songs, the songs that he wrote, were covered by numerous other artists, including big names of the day like Elvis Presley and so on. In fact, they're still covered even now, and they're good songs. but both of those songs hold up reasonably well today. So anyway, this guy in the 1950s, black guy from the southern United States, this guy in the 1950s with his songwriter royalties. Remember, other big artists are covering his songs. So songwriter royalties. He was quite an entertaining entertainer on stage. Great piano playing. He would do some pretty interesting solos on the piano, and like he had a band and everything. So and they were playing in white managers for white clubs were booking them to entertain. And so this guy in the 1950s was making $10,000 a week in the 1950s, US dollars, $10,000 a week. Now, back in the 1950s, you could buy a nice house for $10,000. So that's how much money the guys made. Every week he was making enough money to buy a new house. So yet the documentary biography wants to delve into how he was the victim of racism. He was being held back. He was being kicked into the gutter. White people were oppressing him. Ku Klux Klan, Nazis, fascists. He was being treated abominably, and yet he was one of the highest paid entertainers in the whole of the United States during the heyday, this black guy. But somehow he was the victim of the most evil, atrocious, vicious racism. And again, the propaganda delivery was they take a photograph of some black guy that had been hung in the 1870s, 80, 90 or whatever years before Fats Domino was around doing his thing. And they'd have photographs of that to say, well, this is how bad the blacks were treated. Well, no, that was 80, 90 years previously. Well, why are you relating to this? And anyway, if you go on internet and look at that photograph, the guy was successfully convicted for murdering and raping other black women. So the idea that there is some racist thing is bullshit. But they're throwing this out, this constant inference and very loose associations and jumping back 50 or 100 years in order to try and gin up the so-called racism. But it's nothing more than a cheap, sleazy, fucking race hustle. That's all it was. Fats Domino was lauded as again, white artists covering his songs, the songs that he wrote, and he was a very much in demand entertainer in the day, and again had that great piano playing style. And if you look, you go on to YouTube or something and look at that song, Blueberry Hill, and so on, you'll see that quite unique piano playing style that he pioneered back in the day. So he's a case of someone who was promoted by white artists, promoted by white promoters, managers, record label owners, nightclub owners, venue owners of various concert venues, all of whom were white, and all of whom were booking him, and again covered white. So that there was, if there was any racism against him, you'd be really hard pushed to find it. And assuming it even did exist, then his talent and ability as a songwriter and an entertainer pushed all that aside. The guy was good at what he did. There was one sort of scenario. Again, this is the misrepresentation side of it. This Fats Domino was supposedly turned up at a 5-star hotel that in the day, you rarely saw any black people at it. It's very expensive, on a relative basis, very expensive to go into these hotels, and everybody was, very well behaved, and the misbehavior, loud voices, anything was quite frowned upon. So here's the allegation. Along comes Fats Domino with a large entourage, as the black entertainers tended to have. They always came with large groups of hangers-on, which could be family members or just hanging on. And I don't know why this was the case uniquely with black entertainers and excuse me, and black sports people and so on. And they seem to like him, whether it be Sugar Ray Robinson, the boxer, or Muhammad Ali, the boxer. They seem to always travel with these incredibly large entourage. Some of the people who were quite unruly and obnoxious and loud and drunk and acting in an extremely loud and flamboyant, in-your-face manner. So Fats Domino's allegedly turned up at this 5-star hotel with this large entourage, behaving rather badly. Many of them are drunk and staggering around, and the hotel, understandably said, "No, look, you're not staying here." And assuming this story is even true. And then that is slowly, well, there you go, racist, fucking fascist, fucking Nazis turning away the black guy. No, they weren't turning away the black guy. They were turning away a large group of drunk people who were misbehaving. That's what they were doing. And that was how it was. Black people weren't allowed to. No, black people weren't, and black people did stay. But not large groups of unruly people, behaving like that. They weren't allowed to stay, be they white or black. Even a bunch of white people had come in behaving like that, they would have been turned away. And even the white rock stars, they had to pay very large bonds if they were going to stay in a hotel, and in order to avoid upsetting other guests, they had to hire out the whole floor of a hotel. And this could be a 5-star hotel, so imagine the cost of that. And then they had to put in on top of the cost of having to hire the whole floor, they also had to pay a large bond for the damage that they inevitably would do, or were likely to inevitably do to the hotel. So it's very expensive, and often black musicians were offered the same deal, where you can stay, but it's going to cost you serious money. And screw you, you damn racist Nazi, and off they'd go. So again, that's not an example of racism. Others were treated that way. The next one was a female who's still alive. The next one was a female entertainer. Now she also came from the southern United States, a very poor family, large family. Her father had some sort of minimum wage job, and I had a lot of kids, and they were, a lot of their stuff was charity. Came from charity, their clothes and the hand-me-downs and so on. So mother was a church organist and was quite in demand, sort of around the local area. She's apparently very good, and she introduced the daughter to playing piano and organ fairly. It turns out the kid's a prodigy, got a real sort of sense of music, plays the piano very well, quite undisciplined, but plays very well. She goes into piano playing competitions, also sometimes singing. Kid had a nice voice too. And she in the black, this was in the black areas, and she's in a rural township, so she's got to travel a fair bit, and they weren't well off, so they couldn't necessarily afford to go too far away on public transport. They didn't have a car. So she used to win many of those, or get first prize at least in many of those piano and singing competitions. But they were black only. Then she decided to move it up a notch and do, say, from the age of 11 or 12, compete in white tournaments now. So you've got this black kid coming along, going into what's an all-white tournament. I mean, she's allowed to enter. That probably must have been a bit of a thing, but she was like a church organist type training, so she was hardly going to be at the level of these professionally or classically trained white kids. But she insisted, and I'm sure the biographer documentary sort of scriptwriter people put her up to this, but she insisted the reason she didn't come first when she went into the white competitions, as the only black kid, when he went into the white piano and singing competition, the reason she didn't get first, that was racism. That was fucking fascist, fucking Nazi, fucking Hitler, fucking racism. That was the reason. Was it because she was undisciplined and was just church organist type trained, as talented as she was, and she clearly was. But there are also talented white kids as well who had whose parents, who were much better off, could afford professional piano tutors and so on. So But she's convinced that was all right. She'd win some of them, but most of them she didn't, or didn't get the first prize. This was all down to racism. But how do you then account for where she did get first prize? What was that? Was that somehow a non-racist competition, but the others were racist? So that's never explained. And the fact that she did get first prizes suggested that merit played a bigger part than she asserts that racism did. So so she continues. So she then, quite a young age, really, was given a scholarship by a white institution and by white assessors and so on. Given a scholarship to study music and got a degree in that, and that was all paid for by evil white people. But she still insists that she's the victim of racism. She's explaining that, look, there were things I had to do for the first time, and because I was a black person, this was the racism I suffered. So for the first time, I had to sleep in a dormitory. This is the university. Sleep in the dormitory, and I had to go to the canteen to buy my lunch, and I had to do this and that. And the scholarship either covered some or most of this. And I think she worked on the side as maybe a piano playing at some of the bars or venues around town. But for the first time, she's in a city. She's lived in a village of small town of like a couple of thousand people. Now she's in a small city of 250,000 people, and she's wow, I never knew there were this many people in the whole world. So this very small town young girl, or now a teenager, is in the big city. She feels out of place. She feels like she's in a whole different world, and it's alien and this sort of thing. She puts that down to racism rather than just any small town kid that suddenly finds themselves in the big city. And she was given this scholarship, like she's 15 or 16. So she's kind of jumped a year. Most kids would have been 17 or 18, but she gets this musical scholarship, all paid for by white people, accepted into this white university, and so on, at a time when if the race hustlers would have you believe blacks were never allowed near a university, but here you are. Here's this kid again, gifted piano player. And it's got a good voice too. Now she then, as soon as she comes out of college, she then scores a job straight away as a music teacher at a high school. So again, where's the racism here? I don't see it. She goes straight into the teaching profession. So the argument is as well was that it was a poorer school with black kids in it. Well, so what? The authorities and all the decision makers were white, and they gave you this job. Fresh out of college, you're like 19 years old or something. So she gets the job as a teacher, and she's also playing nightclubs and so on. All the nightclubs are owned by white people, booked by white people, white managers and so on. And then she gets given, if you look at, she went on to have numerous, as a singer, a piano player, numerous top 10 hits around the world. But she has a great voice and does play the piano well. But all the songs bar one was co-written with a black guy, but all the big hits she had are all written by white guys. So it's white songwriters, white song arrangers, white record label owners, and so on and so on. So again, where's the racism in this? These white people are really looking after her. If there's any racism, then she wouldn't get the gigs in the nightclubs. She wouldn't get any of these opportunities. She wouldn't get access to some of these great songs to sing. None of that would have happened. So she's not the victim of race. There's a lot of white people around her who are recognizing her talent. And she does have a great voice, recognizing her talent, giving her the breaks, giving her the gigs, and so on. There are a gazillion would-be, wannabe musos and piano players and singers out there, the majority of whom are white, and yet here's this black girl who's, or young black woman, who gets all these breaks and break after break and more songs and so on. So, and she has a worldwide #1 hit written by a white guy, song arranged and orchestrated by a white guy. And she's given the opportunity by a white guy and so on. So there's no racism here at all. And she's become very wealthy, very, very renowned, and considered from a very prestigious perspective, given all the. But yet the documentary constantly harps about racism, constantly pushes it, won't fucking stop. But there's a lot of interesting stories about how the songwriter came to write the song and how she ended up, getting that song and how she sang it that way and the piano playing style she used. And that would be interesting. That would be great to hear about. But they don't cover any of that stuff. That everything that should be about the history of the music and how it came to be. Every opportunity, it's packed with race hustling bullshit propaganda, and obviously purposefully so. It's like they're trying really fucking hard to push the race hustler angle. And for me, that's a terrible letdown. Here is a talented musician. Here is someone who's got a great voice. Here is someone who sang great songs, that were international top 10 or #1 hits. That's the story. The story about that and how that came to be. Not saying, well, hey, she happens to be black. Let's drop as much race hustling bullshit into this as we can and fuck the musical details. And what a great tragedy to view it that way. Here is a genuinely accomplished singer and musician. Well, why not concentrate on that? There's a lot to talk about there. But no. They have to go down the race hustle path. You've been a Tassos today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.